This video will explore the profound and multifaceted impact of colonialism on Africa. Colonialism can be described as a double-edged sword for Africa, bringing both positive and negative consequences. While European colonial powers built infrastructure like roads, railroads, and ports, this was often achieved using the forced, unpaid labor of the native African population. The development of this infrastructure was primarily designed to exploit the natural resources of African colonies and advance the European colonial presence in Africa. Examples include the railroads built in northern Nigeria and the spur lines constructed in Sierra Leone to facilitate the exploitation of minerals. One of the major impacts of colonialism was the underdevelopment of colonized African countries in various ways. The modern education introduced by colonial powers failed to benefit Africa, as it was designed to serve European imperialist needs and ignored African realities. Colonialism also had a significant economic impact, distorting the patterns of economic development in Africa. The colonial powers caused a disarticulation in the production of goods, markets, trade, transport, social services, and the pattern of urbanization. Indigenous African market centers were disoriented. Colonial powers established new centers and trade routes to export raw materials and import manufactured goods. This economic activity ultimately led to the weakening and eventual death of most native African marketing centers. This interference resulted in the distortion of the African indigenous pattern of economic development and urbanization. Colonialism transformed African trade, making it mainly export-import oriented. This prematurely integrated Africa's trade and economy into the world market and international trade. This premature integration harmed Africa while benefiting advanced European countries, making African nations economically dependent on colonial powers. Focusing further on the economic impact of colonialism, raw materials produced in Africa were not utilized by industries located within the continent. These raw materials were exported to Europe, leading to no organic link between the agricultural and industrial sectors in Africa. The African economy stalled because surplus profits taken by the colonial powers were not reinvested or spent within the African economy. European colonial powers also hindered the development of a comprehensive transport system in Africa. While colonial powers built roads, this transport network was not designed to link African towns with rural areas for effective communication and development. Europeans mainly built transport routes to dispatch raw materials from their sources to places where they would be processed and exported abroad. The transport networks were predominantly limited to railroads and shipping lines. Overall, there was a significant lack of economic integration and cooperation among African territories during the colonial period. Colonialism also led to the disarticulation of social facilities and the pattern of urbanization in Africa. Social facilities were limited and concentrated mainly in urban areas, forcing rural populations to migrate to urban centers for better amenities. This pattern of urbanization resulted in problems like overcrowding, poor sanitation, the spread of diseases, social evils, and ethnic issues. Colonialism also spurred the emergence of different classes and class struggles in the socio-economic and political life of the continent, including the bourgeoisie, petty bourgeoisie, proletariat, and peasants. The African petty bourgeoisie served as a bridge for the European colonial masters to exploit the continent's economy. Consequently, this class managed to control the political leadership following the period of independence. Political power struggles and uneven wealth distribution in modern Africa are rooted in the relationship between the African bourgeoisie and their former colonial masters. The severe impoverishment of many African peoples is a result of colonialism, or colonial hangover. This includes marginalization and oppression by post-independence leaders. Colonialism fundamentally challenged Africa's traditional lifestyles and culture. European colonizers imposed their culture on the indigenous people. Africans often abandoned much of their culture and embraced European ways of life. Indigenous African religious beliefs were weakened and frequently replaced by Christianity. Africans were forced to take European, Christian, or biblical names, abandoning their own African names.